Once upon a time, in a small African village, where the wind caressed the leaves of the baobab trees and the laughter of children echoed through the sandy streets, lived Adama and Miriam, a couple united by deep love. Their house was simple but warm, filled with bright colors and the scent of basap that Miriam prepared every morning. But despite their happiness, an emptiness remained in their hearts. They had no child. For years, they prayed, consulted healers, and traveled to big cities to see the best doctors, but in vain. Hope was fading, replaced by silent pain. One day, after long discussions, Adama and Miriam made a decision. If they could not have a child, they would adopt one. So, they went to an orphanage, a modest building but filled with children whose eyes were full of hope. Among them, a little boy immediately caught their attention. His name was Kasim. He was only 3 years old, with big curious eyes and a small dimple that appeared when he smiled shyly. As soon as he met Miriam's gaze, he reached out to her as if he already knew her. It was obvious. They signed the papers and took Kasim home, their hearts overflowing with love. They raised him as their own son, giving him everything a child could dream of: affection, education, and most importantly, a family. Years passed, and Kasim grew up, surrounded by the unconditional love of his adoptive parents. He called them Papa and Mama, never suspecting that he was not their biological son. Then one day, after more than 10 years of waiting, a miracle happened. Miriam became pregnant. The news shocked the couple, who no longer dared to believe it. When little Ibrahim was born, he was welcomed like a treasure. At first, nothing really changed for Kasim. His parents continued to love, cuddle, and protect him. But little by little, without realizing it, Adama and Miriam's attention shifted away from him. Ibrahim was a fragile baby, needing all his mother's care. The older he grew, the more he took up his parents' love and attention. Kasim, on the other hand, was already grown. He understands, they thought. But Kasim saw everything. He felt the difference. He no longer received the same hugs, the same sweet words. He was no longer the first. One day, when Ibrahim was 6 and Kasim was 13, an incident changed everything. Adama owned a gold watch, a valuable family heirloom. One morning, it disappeared. Furious, Adama questioned his sons. "Who took my watch?" he asked, staring at Kasim and Ibrahim. The youngest lowered his head, uncomfortable. Then, in a small voice, he pointed at his brother. It was Kasim. "I saw him take it." Kasim's eyes widened.
"What? But I didn't do anything."
But Adama didn't listen. To him, his legitimate son could not lie. Anger overwhelmed him, and without trying to understand, he raised his hand and slapped Kasim. "I never want to hear this again. You dishonor us." Miriam said nothing. She lowered her eyes, and Kasim understood that he was alone. That night, unable to sleep, he got up quietly and searched his father's office. He didn't know what he was looking for, but he felt the need to understand. Then, he found a folder. His hands trembled as he opened it. It was his adoption certificate. His breath stopped. He read and reread the words written in black and white. They were not his parents. They had never been his parents. The next morning, with eyes red from crying, he stepped toward Adama and Miriam.
"Why?
Why did you never tell me?" A heavy silence fell over the house. Adama sighed, avoiding his gaze. "Because we loved you like our own son. Then why did you forget me?" Kasim whispered, his voice broken. He didn't wait for an answer. He turned and left the house. Not knowing where to go, he went to the orphanage where he had been adopted. There, he told his story and asked if there were any records of his biological family. An old man, in charge of the archives, searched for a long time. Then, after a moment of silence, he looked up with a smile. "My boy, your mother is still alive." Kasim's heart nearly stopped. They gave him an address. Without thinking, he went there. In front of a small clay house, he hesitated. He felt his heart pounding. Then, gathering his courage, he knocked. A woman opened the door. Her features were tired, marked by the years. But as soon as she saw him, her eyes widened. She brought a trembling hand to her mouth. "Kasim, my son?" Tears rolled down her cheeks. Without waiting, she held him in her arms. A warm, sincere embrace, the embrace of a mother finding her lost child. For the first time in a long time, Kasim felt whole. Days passed, and Kasim got to know his biological mother. He learned that she had been forced to abandon him because of poverty, but had never stopped praying for him. Meanwhile, Adama and Miriam, consumed by guilt, decided to come and ask for his forgiveness. "We were unfair, Kasim," Miriam admitted in tears. "We love you, and we made a terrible mistake," Adama added, ashamed. Kasim looked at them for a long time. He was angry at them, but he still loved them. "I forgive you, but I will stay here, with my mother." They accepted his decision. And so, Kasim started a new life, surrounded by the love of a mother who had never forgotten him. He stayed in touch with Adama and Miriam, but this time, he knew he was free to choose where he belonged. He was no longer a forgotten child. He was a loved son,